Today, David Foster Wallace is going to drop some bombs on writing transformative novels and our duty, yes, I said duty, as writers to do so in 2025. And here on Right Conscious, we talk about everything related to David Foster Wallace. In the playlist down below, you will find over 100 videos on Wallace's books, his life, his writing philosophy, and his philosophy on life. But today, I want to focus on the purpose of our journey here as writers, because if you are a real writer like the ones behind me that spend 3 to 10,000 hours on one of their novels and then have an editor look at it that's also highly skilled and one of the best in the world, then there is really no excuse for you not to at least have some transformative aspects in your novel. Your novel doesn't need to be some moralizing or proselytizing piece of work, and you don't need to set out to make it that. But good art is bigger than just a good story. And if you don't want to hear that from me, let us now hear from Wallace. If what's always distinguished bad writing, flat characters, a narrative world that's cliched and not recognizably human, etc., is also a description of today's world, then bad writing becomes an ingenious mimesis of a bad world. If readers simply believe the world is stupid and shallow and mean, then Bret Easton Ellis can write a mean, shallow, stupid novel that becomes a mordant deadpan commentary on the badness of everything. Look, man, we'd probably most of us agree that these are dark times and stupid ones, but do we need fiction that does nothing but dramatize how dark and stupid everything is? In dark times, the definition of good art, there it is, the definition of good art would seem to be art that locates and applies CPR to those elements of what's human and magical that still live and glow despite the time's darkness. Really good fiction could have as dark a worldview as it wished, but it'd find a way both to depict this worldview and to illuminate the possibilities for being alive and human in it. And so that doesn't seem very hard on the surface, right? Like, okay, I need to have a story that really illuminates human qualities, especially in such dark times, characters and decisions that really are going to show the goodness of the world. But here in 2025, different things are going on. First and foremost, we are in the modern day. We have to continue to focus on inventiveness. We have to push back against further ignorance and darkness. And most importantly, we need to have the focus to put 3 or 10,000 hours of deep work, not distracted work, into a novel that's good enough to apply CPR to some of these things. So I want you guys to think about this. When David Foster Wallace was writing in the 1990s, more people were reading, we were more healthy, more happy, and more intelligent. And so if the world has gotten darker, whether it has or not, but just people perceive themselves that way, then that requires a higher bar as authors to be able to apply CPR to them, to their worldview. It's going to require us to transform more ourselves and figure out what makes our society magical with everyone on their phones and with the drudgery of modern existence. And I really love that Wallace says that your work can have as dark of a worldview as you want in it, but within it, there is a sense of possibility and hope. And, David Foster Wallace is a master of this. If you look at Brief Interviews with Hideous Men, there's possibility in that. If you look at Cormac McCarthy or Kazuo Ishiguro, Margaret Atwood, Octavia Butler, Toni Morrison, many of their novels are very, very dark. But what makes them great is that there is redemption, there is possibility. There are these choices that are set up so beautifully, and that's what makes these authors great, that give us hope or sometimes a loss of hope in humanity. And the way these authors build this is through revision, is through conscious additions of contrast and unconscious symbology and messing with characters and stealing from other authors and working through these things, knowing that there is a reader on the other end that they are trying to influence. Because why did Cormac McCarthy sit down and spend 7,000 or 8,000 hours just adding all these unconscious layers and symbols to Blood Meridian that the average reader will never understand or ever notice? Never notice. And this is one of the most valuable things about going to authors' archives and looking at the early drafts of authors is that you see that they are in a constant sense of urgency to connect to their reader, to be thinking about their reader, to be improving not just the general narrative or the how it flows or the rhythm, but these internal things that when I see it I'm like, wow, this is trying to turn on the light in the reader, not to make them like the story more because the story's already good, but to do something unconsciously to the reader. There is countless time spent by all the best authors behind me doing that. And that's what separates a normal writer who is very skilled and some of the best. And it sucks that we are in the situation we are in now because a lot of these authors behind me had some of the best editors in the world. Editors that would cost you maybe $5,000 or $10,000 to hire if you could even find someone of that quality. And I love that Wallace also talks about our co-creative relationship with the readers. If we have a society that is dark and cynical, then writers who do that will be elevated. And it's almost this deal with Satan that we are taking, that right now, if you guys tapped into whatever negativity that was going on out there and you offered no transformative elements of your novel, people would probably like it more because people don't want to change, actually. People want to sit in their worldview and watch writing tube videos like, these traits predict 90% of failed novels, instead of having someone like me tell them, hey, you need to change your life and do all this work. And readers out in reality would rather fall into deeper levels of pessimism or nihilism or blind faith in whatever they worship. And so that's the next level. Sure, we could just tell great stories, and it's really not that hard to do that. But the next level is to create positive changes in most of your readers out there. It's not that hard. Well, it is very hard, I should say. But the reason I'm talking about David Foster Wallace and everyone behind me right now is because they put that effort in. The easiest way to become forgettable is to just tell a great story. There are millions of great stories, whether that's in video games or whatever else. But what lasts 1,000 years are permanent things, permanent changes, permanent illuminations on what really matters. And when I read Shakespeare, when I read Macbeth, that still touches me. And you already know that Shakespeare just didn't come up with that and wanted to tell a good story. That was a contemplation of so many alchemical and crazy things. Even someone like Chaucer, who never necessarily meant for his work to be published out in the world, when he was sitting there, the Canterbury Tales is a moral tale. It is, showing us, some of the stories are just kind of stories. Others, though, are really contemplations of reality. And so when I look at the entire canon, I'm like, wait, most of these stories transform me. Why is that? What about all the other pulp stories, the pulp fiction, the serialized novels? Why don't we read or remember any of those? And so that's something I want you to think about, because you may not be the next living legend. You might not be in the canon 500 years from now, but here on earth, with the time you have, your art with some effort, with some intention, could actually help people like art has helped you before. But you don't need to walk into it with that intention. But during that revision stage, you need to honestly ask yourself, like all of these authors did, who is this for and how could I really speak to them? And you don't have to do it consciously. You can do it through unconscious symbols. And that's where real writing, that's where people really shine. And so thank you guys for being here. I hope each and every one of you has a great day. If you guys want more David Foster Wallace content, I have a Substack that has over 20 hours of course material on Wallace's work, plus a bunch of other cool stuff, daily podcasts. I would love to see you over there if you want to support the channel, and I will see you guys very soon.